Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good to see you. We are finishing our series today called This Is My Story. This has been a great series. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've had different people come up on this stage and share their story with us. We get this from 1 Peter. Remember, he said that, hey, always be ready to give an answer for the hope that you have in Jesus Christ. So we should always be ready. So when somebody comes to us and says, why do you follow Jesus? Why are you a Christian? Why do you go to church? Why do you read your Bible? Why are you so happy? Why do you have joy? Why do you have peace? All those kind of things. We're ready to go and say, well, let me tell you my story. Let me tell you what Jesus has done for me. That's one of the easiest things we can do. This is what Jesus has done for me. And these people have been coming up on this stage and sharing what God has done in their life, and how he's taken care of them, and how they've encountered him and all these amazing things. And 3 people have shared so far today. We have our last today. And this person, she has been a part of our church for a while. She's actually gone to youth convention, talking about youth convention with me a few times. I'm always looking for good leaders. And I go and I asked her, hey, do you want to go to youth convention? And not only was she saying, oh, I'll go if you have nobody else, she was like, yeah, I'd love to go. And as a youth pastor, you know, if you find somebody who's excited to hang out with students for a weekend, that's usually that's a miracle in and of itself, right? How many of you want to sleep in a room full of stinky junior hires? Not all of them are stinky. I love some of you guys, but no, I'm just kidding. Also, she volunteers in the back. Normally, she's in the back running our screen up here, so she kind of is behind the scenes, but today she's going to be front and center. So would you do me the honor of welcoming Kirsten Williamson to the stage? Come on up, Kirsten. Kirsten, thank you for being willing to share your story today. Are you excited?
So excited.
Reluctantly excited. I think it's going to be really good. We've known you. We've walked with you through part of your story, and but we'd like to hear the whole thing today, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for making me cry, guys, before my story even started. So the worship was great. Thank you. I loved it. So in the beginning, I was born in Southern California. And we only lived there for about a year or so. I don't remember it. Then we moved to Idaho. And we lived in Idaho for about 10 years. And in Idaho, my parents were like Sunday school teachers. We were really involved in the church over there, go every Sunday. And then 10 years later, we moved to Oakhurst. And then we kind of fell out of the habit of going to church when we moved back to California. We got really involved in golf here. The weather's much nicer in California, so it's kind of hard to golf all year round in Idaho.
A lot more golfing weekends here in California.
Yes, lots. So we got into playing tournaments, and my sister and I are very involved in golf. So we kind of, the tournaments were on the weekends mostly, so we kind of fell out of the habit of going to church, and we would go, you know, the important Christmas, Easter, Mother's Day, when we had time, I guess.
We affectionately call those people creasters.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So golf became a really big part of our life. And I knew as a kid, like, I wanted to play golf in college, but I didn't really want to make it my career, unlike my sister. So I wanted to play in college, and that kind of led me to go to California Baptist University. So I played golf there. Let's see, and then it was a Christian school, obviously, and I grew up, you know, going to church, knowing who Jesus was, but I don't think I really understood what, like, living for Jesus looked like, what it meant. So being in that Christian community, like, most of the students are Christians, it's a small bubble you kind of live in college, so I really kind of got to see what they did, how their families lived, you know, it was different. So
you're in that community, you're seeing the real relationship side of Christianity, you would say, maybe for the first time, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is what it looks like to live for Jesus, not just go every once in a while to church, but
right.
It's like we're living for him, we have a relationship with him. You saw that for the first time.
And they were students my age, like, living for Jesus, and I didn't know, I'm so naive, I didn't know, like, that's what I could do at that age, you know what I mean? Like, I could live my life at this age for Jesus. I guess I didn't realize that. So then I really became a follower of Jesus in college, learning all about him. We had Bible classes and stuff, and it was really, like, I loved it. I loved learning about Jesus and more, and getting to have that relationship with him. So my junior year, I think it was, they called them service projects, I think. They were like little missions trips. and I was studying engineering. So we went on a mission or a service project to China for like 3 weeks, and it was very eye-opening, very interesting. Never been to China before. I don't really want to go back, but yeah, it was really neat. Like, we were with a group of engineering students from my school, and we were, living life in China for 3 weeks, and it was, like I said, eye-opening. But I remember reading the Bible while I was there, and it was in the New Testament somewhere, but I remember reading it, and it was probably the first time I was reading through the Bible. Like, never read this passage before by myself, probably. And it was talking about the gifts of the Spirit, I think, and like about miracles and speaking in tongues and prophecy. And I'm like, I don't know why, but I never thought that stuff was real. Like, I don't know. It never crossed my mind that stuff was actually in the Bible. And I remember being in China, reading this passage, and like, wait a second, like, this is here, it's in the Bible? Like, it was very eye-opening to me.
Yeah, being that it's real for even today, right?
Right.
It's like, that never crossed your mind that miracles could happen today, that any of those gifts would be around for today, and you were like, man, this is the first time.
Yeah, for like the crazy people. Like, you guys over there
That's
believe
for the
that.
weird people,
But I didn't know, like, Jesus, it's in the Bible. So anyways.
So you read the scriptures, like, it's right here. How do I, it's real. And wow,
yeah.
In China.
While I was in China, yeah.
Here's a fun fact. You can read the Bible here. You don't have to go to China. So if you want to, you can do that. But
there weren't many books in English there. So
it's the only one.
Yeah.
But that's amazing. In China, you read that and you go, wow, this is real. This is real. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a little bit about college. I graduated in 2014. My husband and we were dating in high school, so we did the whole long distance thing. We got married when I graduated college, 2014.
Fun fact about this, I was in their wedding. I read some scripture. I think it was a last minute thing. Somebody bailed, and I was like the backup, right, Hunter? No, but I showed up. So we were talking, and she's telling me about her wedding. I'm like, yeah, I was there. And what did you say?
I was like, I don't think you were. Were you?
She's like, no, you weren't. I'm like, I read like scripture in your wedding, like you were right there. She's like, no. She
like,
had no
wasn't
memory of me. You had to go home and ask Hunter, and Hunter said
like,
yes, I was. So anyway, that made me feel really good that I'd been completely forgotten.
I still don't remember.
She still has no memory. So anyway.
Sorry about that.
I really appreciate that, Kirsten.
Yeah,
anyway.
Sorry. Anyways, I was busy that day.
Yeah. You had more important things. That's true.
Yeah. But anyways, so we got married. We moved to Gilroy for like 3 months. I think we were living in his grandparents' trailer, which was amazing. Like, I wouldn't have traded that time for anything. I'm glad it was only 3 months, but it was good. Then we moved to Hollister. I got a job in that area. We lived there for a year. And then Hunter got hired on with PG&E in 2015 in Stockton, so we moved to Lodi because we did not want to live in Stockton. And then Lodi was great. We loved Lodi. It's a great little city to live in. Things were going wonderful. Like, we had good jobs. We purchased our first house there. We did the whole Dave Ramsey thing, got debt-free, paid off our student loans. Life was great. And then May of 2019, we had our first baby boy, Jack. And life was really, really good then. We had a sweet little baby boy. Living the American dream. And I think it was like 5 months or so, when he was like 5 months or so. I was trying to breastfeed him, wasn't really having any success. And I remember sitting in my rocking chair in his nursery with him, feeding him, and like being so mad at God. Like, why can't I feed my child? Like, you designed this. Why am I struggling? Like, just being mad at God for not letting this work out how I thought it should work out. And like, clear as day, I heard him say, "You are not his provider, I am." And I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. And that was like the first moment that I really released control and like began to trust him and understand, like, I don't have control of my life like I thought I did. So that was a big moment for me. So he was around 5 months then. And then between 5 and 7 months, I started like feeling a lump kind of in my breast area. And I thought it might have been a clogged duct. But then it started hurting, and I really don't like doctors, so I pushed it off as long as I could. But I ended up going to the doctor. I'm like, yeah, I think I have a clogged duct. Can you help me out? She's like, okay. She kind of feels it. And then she starts feeling my neck. And I'm like, why is she feeling my neck? Like, it's down here. What are you doing? And she's a new doctor. Never saw her before. I was like, okay, this is weird. But didn't think anything was wrong. So then she's like, well, we're going to do an ultrasound, just kind of check things out. It's like, okay, whatever. So I do the ultrasound, and they do it of that lump I felt, and then they do it on my neck, and they're like, do you know why you're here? I was like, yeah, it's a new doctor. She just kind of wants to check things out, make sure things are okay. And they're like, yep. And I think they knew. But so they did the ultrasound. That was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving that year. And then my family, and we were all still in Oakhurst, so I went home for Thanksgiving that week. And I remember, I don't know why Jordan, my sister, said this, but we were kind of talking, I guess, after Thanksgiving, and she's, I must have been telling her some of my symptoms or something, and she's like, sounds like you have lymphoma. I was like, what's lymphoma? That doesn't make any sense. Why would you say that? And then Hunter was working at the time, so I was driving back to Lodi with Jack, and I was thinking about it. I was like, what is lymphoma? So I just Googled it when I was in line at Starbucks, and I was like, oh no, I have all these symptoms. Maybe something is wrong with me. So then that was Thanksgiving. I guess a couple weeks went by, or a week and a half or so. But it was December 10th of 2019, and I was at work, and I get a phone call from the doctor, and she said, you have Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I was like, what? Isn't that cancer? And she's like, yeah. And I was just outside of work. I'm like, okay, I have a 7-month-old baby. I think we have that picture of Jack, of how old he was at that time. But yeah, I was at work. I had a 7-month-old baby, and you have cancer. Wasn't with my family. Hunter was driving to Livermore at the time for his work, and I called Hunter. I'm like, hey, I have cancer. It was just what do you do? I don't know. It was.
Yeah, how did you? Because like you said, life was going according to plan.
Yeah.
You had all the, living the American dream. You have the beautiful baby little boy, 7 months old, and then all of a sudden you get that call at work of all places.
Yeah.
You're by yourself, and it's worst case scenario, the thing that nobody wants to hear, which is you have cancer. And what was going through your head when that call came?
I don't know that anything was really, but I remember being afraid, scared, what does this mean? I didn't really know anybody that had cancer, and I must have thought okay, I'm gonna die, or It was very scary. I remember being scared, and we weren't with family, so I had to make phone calls to my family, and that was really hard, not being there with them. But yeah, I don't know.
Worst case scenario. I mean, literally where you're thinking, I'm gonna die. This is the worst. And then you call Hunter, you call your family, and you get together, and then you get with your doctors, and what's kind of the initial diagnosis phase from there?
So they have a plan, and I'm like, okay, I don't know, you know best. So the first step was to freeze my eggs, because we knew we wanted more children in the future. So we did that. I think that was January of 2020. We started that. And then they're like, Hodgkin's lymphoma, it's very curable. It's 90% success rate. And we're like, great, this won't be bad. We're going to survive. We'll be okay. And they're like, you just do, I think it was 8 rounds initially was what they were thinking of the chemo. And that would have put me done and healthy before Jack's first birthday. So I was sweet, we can do this. No big deal, I'm tough. We got this, right? So then we do, I don't remember if it was 2 rounds or 4 rounds of chemo. But that first or second PET scan after I started the chemo, the cancer was growing back through the chemo, which was not good. It's supposed to be gone.
So they say 6 rounds of chemo, easy peasy, done, and then after 4 rounds, it's growing.
Right, yeah, so the cancer's growing through the chemo.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, this is not a good cancer. This is I think they called it refractory, or I still don't know all the terms, but.
Yeah. Basically worse than they thought it would.
Yes,
thought it was.
Yeah. And so I think it was February 2020, she explained to me that I needed a transplant. And to me, transplant meant like an organ transplant, like I need a new kidney, I don't know what's going on. So she said, you need a bone marrow transplant, and that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, she's like, you need a bone marrow transplant. It's like, okay. So that was February 2020 when she first told me I would need a transplant. But to get the transplant, I had to be cancer-free. So no cancer in my system at all. Then we get the transplant, and the transplant was like very heavy, high-dose chemo, wipe your immune system completely clean, and then then I would regrow my immune system back.
You kind of told us it was like you're almost a newborn baby when
Yes,
you're done. Because it totally wipes your immune system. All previous vaccines and things you had, totally gone. So it's just like, once you're cancer-free, we basically reset you.
Yeah.
And then that'll maybe fix everything, kind of, is putting it real simply.
Yeah.
But that was the plan.
Yes.
In February of 2020.
Yes.
Right.
And Jack was, 8, 9 months old maybe then?
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, wow. And with the transplant, you had to be in the hospital, like, around nobody for, I think, like 3 weeks or 4 months. And at that time, Jack was changing so much week to week, month to month. I'm like, I can't be away from my baby for a month. That was really hard, just processing that. So yeah, and then, so that was February of 2020. I don't know if you remember what happened March of 2020, but COVID happened, and they shut the whole country down. And we didn't know what COVID was then at that time, and I just remember, like, people with COVID are going to the hospitals. I have a weak immune system. I'm on chemo. I have to go to the hospital to get chemo. Like, why am I going here? Like, I shouldn't be here. I just remember being very afraid of going to get chemo at that time. And Hunter said I could say this. I don't think he's in here right now. But he's like, you're either going to die of cancer or you're going to die of COVID. So just get in there and get your chemo. I was like, okay, I can do this.
That's Hunter, man.
Yeah, he's great.
And you were the classic high risk, which they were saying if you're high risk, low immune system, stay home.
Right.
And you have like no immune system because you're on chemo and you're having to go to the hospital.
Where the COVID people are.
With all the COVID sick people are, and you're like, God, what is going on? This is scary, right? And
very unsure, very fearful time of our lives.
Yeah.
So I do the chemo. I think they put me on a different chemo because that one wasn't working. Then that PET scan with that second chemo wasn't working. So now we're on like plan C. They give me this immunotherapy. And that was working for a while. It was actually working pretty good. And then I think it was October of 2020, I was on that immunotherapy, and my Kaiser doctor was like, okay, I think we're ready for transplant. Like, your PET scan looks good. We're going to send you to Stanford, was where my transplant was going to be. So, and all this time, Jordan was trying to get married, and they keep moving their wedding dates because my transplant was supposed to be October, and they wanted to get married October of 2020. So then they had to move their wedding date because I was supposed to go to transplant October of 2020. And I get set, I do the bone marrow biopsy, which is a very painful process. Do all the tests, do everything. I'm ready to go to Stanford. And then like a month later, Stanford calls me and says, yeah, there's too much cancer in your system. You're not going to transplant right now. I was like, what? Like, why did you wait all this time to tell me that I can't go to transplant? Like, you should have looked at this first, is what I thought. And, not send me to transplant, not make me do all this stuff. So I was very frustrated with that. I remember just crying out to God, like, why is this happening? Like, I don't understand.
I remember when that happened because as a church, we've been praying for Kirsten. And this was kind of the big moment we're waiting for where you can go to your transplant. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, bad news again, cancer's still in your system, can't go.
Right.
Just lots of ups and downs in your story where you're like, okay, I'll do this, and then boom, rock bottom. And then, okay, it's looking good, and then boom, rock bottom again. And this is one of those kind of rock bottom moments again where I was supposed to go, it's supposed to be done, it's supposed to be over, and now cancer's still in my system, they can't do the transplant.
Right. It was a long time. So that was, we were told, like, you're not going to transplant in October. And then we always kind of knew we wanted to move back to Oakhurst, but we weren't thinking anytime soon. Like, we were thinking maybe when the kids were in school or older, or, whatever. But I think it was November, it must have been that next month, that we decided we were going to move back with family, and that was really important to us. So we sold our house, I think, in November of 2020, moved back to Oakhurst, and that was a huge blessing, just being closer to family and the church community and everything. And then we actually Keith is our neighbor. He let us rent his house for a couple months, and then we're like looking for a house to buy here, and then he's like, well, do you guys want to buy this house? And we're like, yes, like, that would be awesome. So we ended up not having to move again, which was another blessing because we're going through all this stuff. And it just the timing of it, looking back, the timing of it was all perfect, like God planned. But in it, I was like, this isn't what I want, what I planned, but God worked it all out. So yeah, that was November of 2020, and we started coming to this church, and I remember being, like, I had never really had anyone pray for me like this church has, and like it seemed every week you guys would pray for me, and it just meant so much to me. All the prayers and the support and everything meant a lot. So yeah, they kept me on that immunotherapy, I think, for a little while longer. Then I did radiation in February of 2020. And I think that worked for a little bit, but it still wasn't getting us to where we needed to be. So then they were talking about a clinical trial with that clinical trial, I wouldn't need the transplant. So I was like, sweet, maybe I'm not going to have this transplant. But because of COVID, they ended up canceling it. So it was another, like, yay, no, never mind. And then it was August 4th of 2021 where I finally had my first clear PET scan, like no cancer. There was no question, like, I can go to transplant now. And I remember being in Fresno when I got the call with my sister in a Target, and I just wanted to scream out, like, so loud in that Target, like, yeah, I'm cancer-free. And I just remember being so excited. And the transplant seemed like it was the last hope, like it was the last plan we had, and maybe they had different plans, but it just seemed like if I couldn't get the transplant, then what,
It's like if this doesn't work, nothing will, kind of
right.
thing, right?
Yeah, is what it seemed like. And then actually it was a couple weeks later, it was August 15th of 2020 when I got baptized here. I don't know why I never made that like a priority in my life, because I had been, there's a picture. But like I knew I needed to, and I don't know why I never did, but it just so happened a few weeks after my clear PET scan that I got baptized. So I thought that was pretty neat. So then they send me to the transplant finally. And part of that process, I had to give myself injections, chemo injections at home. So I was doing that, and COVID was still around. So I had to take a COVID test to get my port at Stanford, or I forget exactly, but I ended up having to take a COVID test on my way to Stanford, and I had no symptoms, nothing, but it came back positive. I was like, oh, great, now I have COVID. So they wouldn't let me continue with the transplant. And I was like, why is this happening? So they gave me, I think it was whatever Trump got for his Paxlovid or something. They gave me that to help with the COVID. Hopefully I would test negative sooner.
The non-existent COVID symptoms that you had?
Yeah, I didn't have any symptoms.
They totally canceled the transplant.
Yeah, they put it on pause.
Transplant because you've come positive.
And I was already giving myself chemo injections to collect my stem cells. I was just like, why is this happening? But anyways, they ended up being able to do the collection without a port. I had to lay in a bed, I think it was for 5 hours or something. They did it through my veins instead of through the port, so I couldn't move, just in the bed. It wasn't what I had planned, but we did it anyways. Thankfully, they got enough stem cells they collected, enough if I need a transplant again, they have enough, so I won't have to do that again. So they did allow me to do that, continue with that, I guess, even with the positive COVID test. So then they sent me home, and said, you have to wait till you have 2 negative COVID tests or whatever it was. And I would have to drive to Stanford to get those COVID tests. So I drove to Stanford a few times just for a COVID test. And it was finally October of 2021. I had no COVID, no cancer. I'm going for transplant. I'm like, sweet. So I had never been more excited to get this transplant than October of 2021. So we left for Stanford October 18th of 2021. Jack must have been, how old was he? Not 2 yet, a year and a half maybe. So I had to leave him for a month, which was the hardest thing I've ever had to do.
And there, at this transplant, you're in an isolated room by yourself because you're so weak and your immune system's so low.
Yeah.
And I think we do have a picture of you here. This is during that transplant. Not good times.
No, no.
And you're here without Jack, and I think Hunter, was he able to come see you?
Yeah, so they allowed, thankfully, because COVID, we kind of knew a little more what it was, but Stanford, they allowed 2 visitors, 1 at a time, only for certain hours. So my mom was able to come and Hunter was able to come. They would switch off. But I was allowed to have somebody with me, which I can't imagine doing something like that by yourself without your family. It must have been very hard. But the nurses were amazing. I had so many wonderful nurses that took care of me and all the other patients. But yeah, I was able to have Hunter and my mom there. So yeah, but I was very weak. Lost my hair again. I lost it twice. That was the second time. And yeah, you're just in this room. You're in this little like triangle wing of the hospital. You can kind of walk laps, and you had to wear this big mask. I don't know if I had a picture of that mask, but it was like Bane, I think you said. Like,
you've seen Batman. She looked like Bane from Batman. But
yeah.
If you don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's just this big mask. But we were still able to like meet people in that wing and hear their stories, and we still keep in contact with a few of them, and it's still just neat that you can make relationships with other people who are struggling and going through something similar. And I think I forgot to mention, but in the beginning, I felt like it was all like my own strength. Like, I can do this, I'm tough, no problem. But then as it kind of got worse and worse, I was like, why don't I just use this time to, like glorify God or like share his love with other patients who are here. So I started wearing like Christian t-shirts, like faith over fear, like just random Christian t-shirts. And so many comments and just conversations started just because I was wearing a t-shirt. Like, I'm not a very outgoing person. I won't necessarily go like, hey, do you know about Jesus while they're getting chemo? But just the shirts would spark a conversation with these people. And I don't know that I could say that, maybe I can, but like give them hope during that tough time. So something simple as that was something I could use.
Well, and I'll say this too, because you and Hunter were coming to our small group at the time, and it was amazing. All these things that Kirsten was going through, again, we're praying for her as a church. We know, and there's these ups and downs, but the whole time, Hunter and Kirsten still just had joy, which is an amazing thing. They could come and they could laugh and they could smile and they could have this joy, and you have no hair. I know how that is. But yours came back, so you're happy.
Yeah.
But it was just amazing to see, and I know you brought that into that room with you too when you were with those other people, that they could see your joy and your happiness, and they ask you, again, why do you have joy, or why are you wearing that shirt? And you had opportunities to share your story, and you got to tell people about what the Lord was doing.
Yeah, and that's not on our own strength. Like, you can't. I don't know how people go through something like that without Jesus and like the joy of Jesus with that. It'd be so hard. So that was important to me to like keep that, and that hope of Jesus is always there. It didn't never go away. So yeah, I was very blessed to know Jesus in that time.
So that was October of 21, and that was right during our trunk or treat and stuff.
Yeah.
And you had some things you want to talk about.
Yeah, I had a pic. So Jack, this must have been his second or.
I think we have a picture of Hunter with Jack. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, so that's how I went trick-or-treating with them that year. It was through FaceTime. But yeah, it was really sweet, and you guys did the trunk or treat thing here, and Angela got together and took videos of all you guys. Sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah, I remember Pastor Angela went by and we videoed every car. We all said, "Hey, Kirsten, praying for you, love you," as you're sitting there in that room, because we were all thinking of you and praying for you and wishing you were with us. But
yeah, it meant a lot to just be included, I guess, in a lonely time. So thank you for your guys' support and prayers. Sorry. So then finally, November, in the transplant, I had to have no fevers to be able to go home, and I was just every day like, please no fevers, please no fevers. And I think it might have been 3 or 4 days of fevers, and I was just getting very sad and wanting to go home to my family. And it was November 12th. Actually, I want to share this story too about my mom. I love Peyton Manning, but she went out of her way and was able to get Peyton Manning to send me a video. And that was like so, I don't know, it's a weird thing about me, but it was so special to have a video of Peyton Manning. Like, it sounds so dumb, but it was.
I'm jealous.
It was very special. It was very special, and that kind of lifted my spirits again. And so finally, November 12th, I was able to go home, and I live in a wonderful neighborhood, lots of great neighbors, and they actually made me signs. I have some pictures of those signs, and just coming home to that made me smile so much. So yeah, just this community is amazing. I couldn't go through anything like this without you guys, and the love of Jesus that you guys share with me is awesome. So then I'm cancer-free. I did the transplant, but I was very weak. So it took a while to kind of grow my immune system back and get healthy again. But I remember that first PET scan, after the transplant. Thank you. I remember being very nervous for that first PET scan after the transplant. Like, this was the last straw. If this didn't work, what's going to happen? So just almost being in kind of a depressed state of like, is this going to work? I don't know. But that first PET scan was January of 2022, and it came back clear. So then they had me do another one at 6 months post-transplant. Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah. Definitely answered prayer. So 6 months again, came back cancer-free. And then at this time, Hunter and I are wanting more kids, and we're talking to our oncologist, like, when do you think we could start having more kids? And she's like, well, we usually wait after 2 years, but I had a PET scan, I think it was June of 2023, which would have been like a year and a half after the transplant. She's like, if this one comes back clear, I won't sign off on it, but you're probably okay. And we're like, okay, great. So June 2023 came back clear, and then July of 2023, we found out I was pregnant. And I was like, what? This wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't need to use my frozen eggs or anything. It just happened naturally. So then March 11th of 2024, my little baby boy Colt was born. And he's the happiest little baby ever. So now we have 2 boys, and life's always been good, but it's good again. So yeah.
And that's a miracle in and of itself. Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Kirsten, you have an amazing story of what God's done in your life, and I thank you for sharing with us today. But is there anything that you would like us as your church family to take away from your story? If we had just a few things, what would you say to remember from your story, to take away from it?
Yeah, just the faithfulness of God all through all of that. Like, there were ups and downs, and obviously this world, we have ups and downs, but God never left my side. Like, he would always provide like scriptures or songs or he would speak to me in so many different ways of like when I would read my Bible, like that other verse would pop up somewhere else. And I was like, wow, just how he would speak to me was so sweet through all that time. And I felt so close to him during all of that. And just the peace that I did feel like there was a lot of very fearful times that we went through those years, but I always felt his presence and his peace with me in all of that, which was amazing. Like, it helped us get through so much.
You actually told me as we were talking that you view your cancer as a blessing now. And can you explain that? Because when we hear a cancer as a blessing, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
But can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, it's weird to say. I don't think like non-Christians really understand this, but going through something like that, it drew me so much closer to God. And like I said in the beginning, like it felt like it was on my own strength, and like, not that I didn't need him, but I didn't depend on him as much as I would have because of all the ups and downs I had. Like that was all I had to depend on him. But I don't think I would have. I'm pretty stubborn, so I don't think I would have learned that without all of that. So yeah, I do view it as a blessing and something that brought me a lot closer to Jesus.
Use that to draw you to him, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You also talked about how the Lord spoke to you so much through the scriptures and through the worship music you were listening to and all of that. And you encouraged our students in this, but do you mind sharing on that a bit?
Yeah, just that daily spending time with God. And like I said, he would just talk to me in so many different ways. And one of the ways I've really enjoyed and I found it sweet is I started this 5-year prayer journal. So like every day, it has 5 years of prayers. And so every day, I think I started it May of 2020 or something like that. And so now it's kind of getting to the 5th year, but I can look back on all those prayers daily and see the faithfulness of God through all of that time, which is something I'll treasure forever. But yeah, just seeing his faithfulness, praying, having those study times and reading the Bible, that was really a great foundation for for him to help me get through something like that. So yeah, that was important for me.
And let me ask you this: do you believe that God still does miracles today, Kirsten?
Yeah, obviously. I don't know that I would have said that before, but now I do. I think all babies are miracles, but my 2 are especially miracles just because what we went through, I think. But yeah, I think Colt's a little miracle for sure.
Yeah. And
then just the healing too, like that's a miracle. I don't know that the doctors would have expected that. Yeah. I've never asked them, but maybe I should.
All those years ago reading in China, hey, God still does miracles, and then you had no idea the miracle he'd do in your life years later.
Right.
But you are a miracle, Kirsten. Your children are a miracle. And thank you again for sharing your story with us today. Can we give Kirsten
Thanks for listening.
A thank you? Hey, can we stand together? We've heard Kirsten's story, the amazing things God has done for her. He walked with her through the difficult times of life, and he took care of her. Maybe not the way she had initially planned, but he was there for the whole time and took care of her. And she's a miracle. God did a miracle in her life. And that little baby Colt, they told her, probably won't have a child naturally. You might have to do some, whatever, but Colt is here today. And that's a miracle of God. So I wanted to encourage you out there today. You might be here and you're going through a hard time. I don't know what it might be. We go through hard times in life. That's life. That's what Jesus even said. You're going to go through trials and tribulations and problems. But he said, but take heart because I have overcome the world. So you might be out there and you're going through a hard time, and here's what I encourage you to do, just like Kirsten did. She drew near to God. That's maybe even God using those situations to say, hey, I want you to come to me. I want you to draw near to me. And he promises when we draw near to him, he draws near to us. So we have this time right now where we have some people heading to the sides of the auditorium, and they're there for you, they're there for us, and we're going to draw near to God. We're just going to come to him. We're going to cast our cares, our worries, our burdens, all these things on Jesus, because he's the only one who can handle these things. We can't in ourselves, in our own strength. We will fail, we'll fall, but Christ can handle these things. And you might be out there and you need a miracle. It might be something just major, a major miracle where the doctors or whoever is saying it can't be done, it's over, whatever. God still does miracles today. It wasn't just for 2,000 years ago, it's for today as well. And we believe in miracles here at this church. We believe that God does miracles, and we see evidence of that. So we have some time to go to the Lord. And I encourage you, if you're here and you need Jesus, just go to him. Say, Jesus, I need you. I'm drawing near to you. If you need a miracle, go to God. No matter how big, how small you think it is, go to God. Bring it to him. These people at the sides, again, they're there to pray with you. We go to God together. They can pray over you. They can bring these big needs to God, and we'll pray for a miracle with you. But let's just take some time right now, drawing near to Jesus. Kirsten asked for this song. This is Reckless Love. It's a song just talking about the amazing love that God has for us, that he just seeks us out. It's amazing that we have a God who loves us so much and takes care of us and is with us through these hard times, these trials and tribulations, and does these amazing miracles. It's an amazing thing. So let's worship him. Let's draw near to him. Let's come to him with the miracles we need, and let's expect God to do big and awesome and mighty and powerful things. Let's go to him.